Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a really fascinating look at the absolute engine of our modern economy. We're going to decode the mechanics, the mindsets, and yes, the myths of starting a business. And we're doing it all using clear, structured insights pulled straight from our source material. Okay, let's just do a quick flyby of our roadmap. We'll start with what is an entrepreneur, look at their impact on society, and map out their core functions. Then, we'll dive into the mindsets of successful founders, spend some time busting common business myths, and finally explore choosing the entrepreneurial path. Sound good? Let's get right into it. I absolutely love this quote from Katerina Fake because it just perfectly captures the human element of this whole journey. She says, "The most successful entrepreneurs I know are optimistic. It's part of the job description." You literally have to believe in a better future to go out and build it, right? Optimism isn't just some nice-to-have trait, it's the actual fuel that keeps a venture moving. So, Section 1. What exactly is an entrepreneur? Let's define the role. At its absolute core, an entrepreneur is not just someone who decides to print some business cards and start a company. It's a person who actively spots a gaping hole in the market and creates a brand new process to fill it. It is where fulfilling an unmet need meets generating real, tangible value for a customer. Because honestly, if your business doesn't solve a real problem, it's just not going to survive. And what's super fascinating is just how broad this definition actually is. I mean, as we're animating these examples, whether you're looking at a huge grocery chain like Whole Foods, a tech giant like Ola Cabs or Make My Trip, or even the incredible local cooperative model of Lijat Papad, the fundamental mechanism is exactly the same. They all looked out at the world, found a missing puzzle piece, and built a solution to fit it. Moving right along to Section 2, the impact on society, and why this all actually matters. You see, new ventures create this massive ripple effect that literally transforms communities. Founders take raw, local resources, think of the whole local for vocal idea, and turn them into thriving regional economies. They generate wealth, they add some serious numbers to the national income through tax revenues, and crucially, they create jobs. When just one single business takes off, the whole surrounding region gets a major economic upgrade. It's a real game changer. All right, Section 3, the core functions. What does the day-to-day actually look like? Well, there are 5 main steps that totally demystify the daily grind of running a business. It takes it from this lofty buzzword down to brass tacks. First, you're making the big decisions on the policy of production. Then you're actively managing resources and keeping control. Third, you're dividing up the income among the factors of production. Fourth, you're taking on the risk and bearing the uncertainty. And finally, you are constantly innovating just to stay ahead of the curve. I really want to zoom in on that fourth point for a second. Uncertainty bearing. This is key because unlike insurable risks, things like fire or theft where you just buy a policy and you're covered, bearing unpredictable uncertainty is arguably the defining trait of an entrepreneur. It's about staring down sudden economic policy changes, wild shifts in what consumers want, or a brand new competitor popping up out of nowhere and steering your ship safely through that storm. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, Mindsets of Successful Founders. Let's open up their psychological toolkit. Here is the secret. You do not need some magical, inborn personality to pull this off. You just need to consciously build up a few specific traits. You got to be a self-starter, stay open-minded, build your confidence, and be fiercely competitive. But you know what one of the absolute most vital traits is? Strong people skills. Empathy and communication are just as critical as being able to push through failure. You have to be able to connect with your team and your customers if you want to build something truly visionary. Steve Jobs actually hit the nail on the head with this. He said, "I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance." And that just grounds all that academic theory into one stark reality, doesn't it? You've got to be willing to keep pushing forward when things inevitably hit the fan. Perseverance is literally the glue holding that whole toolkit together. Okay, Section 5, Busting Common Business Myths. Time for a little fact versus fiction. First up on the chopping block is this persistent myth that founders are just born that way. Nope. The reality is that entrepreneurship is very much a learned skill. Experts completely agree you don't need mystical, inborn superpowers.
You can absolutely learn how to analyze a market, structure a company, and make decisive choices. It's a discipline. Think of it just like engineering or law.
Oh, and here's another massive one. People always think you need this lightning bolt, completely original idea to succeed. Honestly, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. More often than not, the most successful founders just figure out a way to make the existing wheel spin way faster and smoother. You can just take an existing concept, tweak it, improve it, and execute it way better than the competition. What about risk? The myth paints entrepreneurs as these extreme daredevil gamblers throwing caution to the wind. Actually, scratch that. Reality is the exact opposite. They take very well-calculated risks. They gravitate towards situations where they've thoroughly crunched the data, figured out how to mitigate the downside, and can actually exert some real control over the final outcome.
And the final myth we're busting today, the funding myth. The idea that you need a giant vault of cash to even begin. You really don't. So many founders start incredibly small, just relying on personal savings. Remember the amazing story of Legit Papad we touched on earlier? They famously started with just 7 women and a grand total of 80 Indian rupees as capital. And from that, they scaled up into a massive nationwide cooperative. It's just proof that starting small works. Which leads us to our final chapter, Section 6, Choosing the Entrepreneurial Path. We are currently witnessing a total seismic shift in how people view their careers. Check this out. According to a 2013 ICEED study looking at students in emerging economies, a jaw-dropping 87% aspire to become entrepreneurs. Only a tiny fraction, just 13%, actually prefer the traditional corporate management route. The vast majority of this generation actively wants to build their own thing rather than just work for someone else. And this optimism isn't just blind hope. An incredible 90% of those exact same surveyed students firmly believe their economy is just bursting with new opportunities. They look around and they see a landscape that's absolutely ripe for fresh ideas and disruptive businesses. The best part is that society is really stepping up to meet this demand. With targeted government support like the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, massive digital learning platforms like Coursera, plus these huge active networks of incubators, mentors, and angel funds, you literally have more structural support today than at any other point in history. You do not have to figure the whole shebang out on your own. So, that leaves us with one final, very important question. You've got the blueprint now. Are you ready to take the calculated risk? As this explainer has shown, business is not magic. It's just a deliberate process of solving problems, bearing uncertainty, and fulfilling unmet needs. So what problem are you going to solve first?